The Mysterious Adventures of Arsène Lupin, Episode 2, The Man in the Bowler Hat. Welcome back, Detective. After solving the impossible mirror room murder, Arsène Lupin has established himself as Paris's most unconventional detective, a gentleman thief who now catches criminals instead of being one. But today's case will test whether French criminal expertise can decode British methodology. When London's most methodical crimes arrive in Paris, can Lupin's intuition overcome systematic English villainy? Prepare for a case where the familiar becomes foreign. Picture this: November 1909, the fog-shrouded streets of Paris. A series of peculiar robberies has begun, each executed with precision that feels distinctly un-French. 3 wealthy homes burglarized in 3 weeks, and the only clue connecting them, witnesses report seeing a man in a distinctive English bowler hat near each crime scene shortly before the thefts. Not a typical Parisian criminal's choice of headwear, wouldn't you agree? Inspector Ganimard visits Lupin's apartment. Yes, they've developed an unofficial arrangement where Ganimard pretends he's not consulting a known criminal, while Lupin pretends he's not helping the police. These robberies bother me, Ganimard admits, spreading case files across Lupin's table. They're too methodical, too precise. They lack the flourish of French criminality. They feel ... imported. Lupin examines the reports with interest. 3 victims, Monsieur Darbois, Madame Letard, and Baron Haussmann. All wealthy, all with sophisticated security systems, all robbed with surgical precision. No violence, no unnecessary theft, only the most valuable portable items taken. You're right, Inspector. This isn't Parisian style. This is London work. Think about what makes British crime different from French. My Apprentice. French criminals often display artistry and individual flair, like Lupin himself, making crimes into performances. But British crime, particularly from London's professional underworld, tends toward systematic efficiency. Emotion is weakness, flourish is risk, methodology is everything. The bowler hat isn't just fashion, it's a signature of approach. But here's what truly intrigues Lupin. Each victim received a warning note exactly 48 hours before being robbed. The notes are identical, printed on cheap paper in block letters. Your security is insufficient. Improve IT or lose your valuables. 48 hours, it's audacious yet practical, giving victims time to panic and potentially make security mistakes rather than improvements. Why warn them at all? Ganimard puzzles. Why give victims time to prepare? Lupin's smile suggests he understands something the inspector doesn't, because the warning itself is part of the method. A stressed victim makes errors. They add guards who don't know the property, install new systems they haven't tested, create chaos in their security rather than strengthening it. The warning isn't mercy, it's psychological manipulation. The fourth note arrives that very afternoon, delivered to the residence of Comte Armand de Gerbois. Same cheap paper, same block letters, same 48-hour warning. Ganimard wants to flood the Comte's home with police officers, but Lupin suggests something different. Let me stay there as a guest. One person, familiar face to the household. No disruption to routines. I'll observe not just for intruders, but for how the warning affects the family. Sometimes the crime's psychology reveals more than its methodology. The Comte agrees reluctantly. Having Arsène Lupin as a houseguest is socially awkward, but losing family heirlooms is worse. I accompany Lupin, and what we observe over the next 48 hours is fascinating. The Comte becomes paranoid, suspicious of his own servants. He installs additional locks, hires 2 extra guards who don't know the property layout, changes his routine constantly. His wife grows anxious, checking jewel cases repeatedly. The household descends into chaos, masked as heightened security. See how the warning works? Lupin whispers to me on the second evening. The Comte has created confusion in his own defenses. His regular servants feel distrusted and perform their duties resentfully. The new guards don't coordinate with existing security. He's made his home more vulnerable, not less. That's the genius of British systematic crime. Let the victim defeat themselves. But here's where Lupin's criminal experience provides unique insight. I've been watching something else. That new footman hired yesterday, allegedly from an agency to replace one who fell ill. Notice how he moves through the house. He's not learning the layout, he's confirming it. He already knows where everything is. Think carefully, detective. What does this tell us about the criminal's preparation? Lupin investigates discreetly and discovers the sick footman isn't sick at all. He's been paid to take a week's vacation and recommend his cousin as a replacement. The replacement isn't really his cousin. The bowler-hatted man has infiltrated the household not through breaking in but through systematic corruption of the staff network. Very British, very methodical. As the 48-hour deadline approaches, Lupin prepares a trap. He doesn't reveal the false footman or change security arrangements. Instead, he positions himself in the Comte's study where the most valuable items are kept. A collection of rare medieval manuscripts worth a fortune. At precisely 2 a.m., when household security is statistically most lax, he waits in darkness. What happens next is a masterclass in British criminal efficiency. The false footman doesn't sneak or skulk. He simply walks through the house during his scheduled patrol as a legitimate guard, uses keys he's copied over 2 days of access, and enters the study as if he belongs there. No forced entry, no suspicious behavior, just methodical execution of a thoroughly planned operation. "Good evening," Lupin says softly from the shadows, lighting a lamp. The false footman freezes, hand on the manuscript case. Up close, we can finally see him clearly, middle-aged, nondescript, wearing that distinctive bowler hat even indoors. His face shows no panic, just resignation. "You're Arsène Lupin," he says in accented French, his British origins clear. I should have known the Comte would hire you. But here's where the case becomes more interesting than simple capture. Lupin doesn't immediately call for the police. Instead, he asks, "Who sent you to Paris?" This systematic approach, this methodical corruption of household staff, it's very London, very professional, but it's not your natural style, is it? You're following someone else's methodology. Think about Lupin's detective instincts. My Apprentice. He recognizes that solving one crime isn't enough if it's part of a larger pattern. The footman is just an operator, but someone designed this system, trained him, sent him to Paris with specific instructions. Who benefits from importing British criminal methodology to France? The footman, whose real name is Thomas Wickham, initially refuses to talk. But Lupin makes an unusual offer. "I'm not interested in arresting you, Thomas. You're a small player, but I am interested in stopping whoever's establishing a British criminal network in Paris. Help me identify your employer, and I'll ensure you face reduced charges and deportation rather than prison. Continue protecting them, and I'll make sure French justice is considerably less gentle." It's vintage Lupin, more interested in preventing future crimes than punishing past ones. And it works. Wickham reveals that he's been hired by someone calling themselves the Director, a mysterious figure who's recruiting British criminals to operate in Paris using systematic London methods. The Director provides detailed reconnaissance, corrupts staff networks in advance, and charges clients 40% of the stolen value for this infrastructure. It's criminal franchising, Lupin realizes with grudging admiration. Someone's industrializing theft, removing artistry and individual skill in favor of reproducible methodology. Very British, very efficient, very dangerous to the traditional balance between criminals and police. If this succeeds, crime becomes assembly line production rather than individual enterprise. But who is the Director? Wickham has never met them. All instructions come through coded newspaper advertisements and dead drops. Payment arrives by anonymous bank transfers. It's a faceless criminal organization, the antithesis of Lupin's personal, artistic approach to crime. And it's spreading through Paris like fog through London streets. Lupin lets Wickham go, shocking the British criminal and Inspector Ganimard, who's been listening from the next room. "You're releasing him," Ganimard sputters. He's a confessed burglar. But Lupin's reasoning is strategic. We arrest him. The Director simply sends another operator. We let him go. We can follow him to discover more about the network. Sometimes catching one criminal prevents one crime. Understanding a criminal organization prevents hundreds over the next week. Lupin and I follow Wickham discreetly through Paris. He retrieves instructions from a dead drop in the Tuileries garden, collects payment from an account at Credit Lyonnais, and eventually meets with two other British criminals at a cafe in Montmartre. They're discussing targets, comparing notes, coordinating efforts. It's organized crime in the most literal sense. But here's the breakthrough. One of them mentions needing to report to the Director at the British Embassy, then immediately catches himself looking nervous. The British Embassy. Lupin and I exchange glances. Could the director be someone with diplomatic immunity using their protected status to run a criminal network? Lupin investigates the embassy staff and discovers something troubling. A new cultural attaché named Reginald Crowley arrived from London 6 months ago, exactly when these systematic robberies began. His official role is promoting British-French cultural exchange. But his background reveals something more interesting. He was formerly a Scotland Yard inspector who resigned under unclear circumstances involving irregularities in evidence handling. Think about this carefully, detective. A former police detective would know exactly how investigations work, how to avoid leaving evidence, how to exploit gaps in French law enforcement, and diplomatic immunity would protect him from arrest even if discovered. It's the perfect criminal setup, systematic knowledge protected by international law. But proving it is another matter. Lupin can't simply break into the embassy to gather evidence that would create international incidents and likely protect Crowley by forcing the British government to defend him. He needs something more subtle, more psychological. He needs to make Crowley reveal himself. Lupin places an advertisement in the Times of London, the newspaper Crowley reportedly reads daily. Director position available seeking systematic individual for criminal enterprise. Proven methodology essential. French operations preferred. Generous compensation. Reply box 247. It's bait designed specifically for Crowley's psychology, the lure of expanding his operation. The validation of his systematic approach being sought after. 3 days later, a response arrives at the box number. Interested party requests details on French operations scope and compensation structure. Systematic expansion possibilities of particular interest. References available from London sources. The letter is typed on British Embassy stationery, probably stolen, but traceable. Crowley has taken the bait, unable to resist the ego satisfaction of being recognized for his criminal methodology. Lupin springs his trap. He arranges a meeting at a neutral location, the Café de la Paix, very public, very safe. When Crowley arrives expecting a criminal recruitment discussion, he instead finds Lupin with comprehensive evidence of his network, Wickham's testimony, financial records linking embassy accounts to payments, communications between operators mentioning his name, and, most damning, his response to the advertisement written on official stationery. Monsieur Crowley, Lupin says pleasantly, you've built an impressive criminal organization, systematic, efficient, methodical, everything I'd expect from a former Scotland Yard inspector. But you made one critical error. You applied British methodology to French operations without understanding that French crime is fundamentally psychological, not systematic. Your operators follow procedures perfectly, but they lack the flexibility to adapt when someone like me investigates. Crowley's diplomatic immunity protects him from arrest, but Lupin has another weapon: reputation. I'm going to publish everything about your network in tomorrow's newspapers. Your British superiors will recall you immediately to avoid embarrassment. Scotland Yard will investigate why a former inspector is running criminal operations. Your systematic network will collapse because its systematic director is exposed. You'll be safe from French prison, but your career, legitimate or criminal, is finished. It's checkmate through publicity rather than prosecution. Crowley recognizes defeat. You've won, Lupin. I underestimated French intuitive methods because I believed systematic approaches were universally superior. That was my miscalculation. Lupin nods. We each have our strengths. British crime is efficient, but French crime is adaptive. Your mistake was thinking efficiency automatically defeats creativity within a week. Crowley is quietly recalled to London, the British Embassy issues formal apologies, and the systematic robbery network collapses without its director. Inspector Ganimard is frustrated that no one goes to prison but acknowledges the outcome. Crime stopped, criminals dispersed, network destroyed. I suppose that's victory even without arrests. So tell me, detective, what does this case teach us about the clash between systematic and intuitive methods? Crowley's British approach was methodical and efficient, but it lacked flexibility. Lupin's French approach was improvisational and psychological, but it required understanding human nature deeply. Neither is absolutely superior. They're different tools for different situations. The newspapers report the story as British criminal network exposed by gentleman thief. Some criticize allowing Crowley to escape prosecution. But Lupin writes to Sherlock Sholmes in London about the case and receives an interesting response. Well done exposing Crowley. Scotland Yard is grateful, though they'd never admit it publicly. Your intuitive methods complemented our systematic investigation nicely. Perhaps British and French approaches work best in combination. Your occasionally allied opponent, This case solidifies Lupin's reputation as detective thief, someone who understands crime from both sides and can navigate between legal and illegal worlds too. Achieve justice when conventional methods fail. He's not replacing police, but filling gaps they cannot reach. Join me next time for The Banker's Last Secret, where Lupin investigates a murder that appears to be suicide and discovers that financial crimes can be deadlier than any violence. When money becomes motive and ledgers hide murder, can Lupin decode the language of fraud before another victim falls? The systematic world of banking meets Lupin's intuitive genius, and the results are explosive.